Lieutenant Park sat alone in the observation deck, watching the twin suns of 442 slowly sink below the horizon. The sky turned orange, then purple, then a deep blue that reminded her of Earth's oceans. She had been stationed at Outpost Gamma 7 for 3 months now, and she still was not used to the beauty of this alien world. Her job was simple on paper. She was the human liaison to a species of apex predators who had ruled this sector of space for thousands of years. They looked like a mix between wolves and large cats, but their bodies were covered in scales that shimmered like oil on water. They had 4 eyes instead of 2, and their teeth could cut through metal. Every other species in the galaxy feared them. But not humans. Humans had fought alongside them in the border wars, and something strange had happened. They had watched human soldiers refuse to give up even when they were wounded. They had seen humans carry their injured friends for miles through enemy fire. They had witnessed humans laugh and sing songs even when death was certain. They did not understand humans, but they respected them, and so an alliance was formed. Yawned and stretched her arms. She had worked the night shift, monitoring communication signals from the outer rim. Now she was tired and her eyes were heavy. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes, just for a moment. She did not hear the soft clicking of claws on the metal floor. 3 cubs crept into the observation deck like shadows. They moved on all fours, their bodies low to the ground, their 4 eyes fixed on the sleeping human. The smallest cub was named. He was only 4 years old in human terms, barely up to knee. His scales were still soft and pale blue, not yet hardened into the dark armor of an adult. Behind came his littermates and was bigger and louder, always the first to get into trouble. Was quiet and watchful, preferring to observe rather than act. The 3 cubs had been following for weeks. They were fascinated by her. She was so different from the adults. She was soft and slow and made strange sounds when she was happy. She wore colorful things on her body and put strange objects on her face. His eyes locked onto his bag, which sat on the table beside her chair. The bag was open and something inside caught the light from the setting suns. Something shiny, something interesting. Looked at. They had a silent conversation with their eyes, the way cubs often did. Moved first. He crept forward on silent paws until he was right next to the table. He could hear slow, steady breathing. She was deep in sleep. Good. He reached up with one paw and gently pushed the bag. It tipped over and several objects spilled out onto the table. A small computer, some wrapped food, a tube of something that smelled like flowers, and a pair of sunglasses. Had never seen anything like them. They were dark and smooth, shaped like 2 circles connected by a thin bridge. The surface was like a mirror, reflecting his own face back at him. He picked them up carefully with his front paws, turning them this way and that. "What is that?" whispered, creeping closer. "I do not know," whispered back, "but it is beautiful." Tilted her head, studying the object. "I have seen the human wear these." She puts them on her face over her eyes. "Why would she cover her eyes?" asked. "That is foolish. How would she see her enemies coming?" "Maybe she has no enemies," suggested. Snorted, "Everyone has enemies." Was not listening to his littermates. He was too busy trying to figure out how the object worked. He held it up to his face and tried to fit it over his eyes, but it was designed for human features, not. The arms were too short, and it kept falling off. Then he had an idea. He stood up on his hind legs, the way he had seen humans stand. It was uncomfortable, but he could balance if he tried. He held the sunglasses in place with one paw and looked at his reflection in the observation deck window. He looked different. He looked serious, important, like the humans in the moving pictures that sometimes watched on her computer. "Look at me," said, deepening his voice. "I am a human." Burst out laughing, but quickly covered his mouth with his paws. Eyes went wide with delight. "Let me try," demanded, reaching for the sunglasses. "No, they are mine," protested. You found them, but we all came here together, argued. Quiet hissed, you will wake the human. But it was too late. Eyes fluttered open. She saw 3 cubs standing in front of her, one of them wearing her sunglasses and standing on his hind legs like a tiny, scaly person. For a moment nobody moved. The cubs stared at the cubs. Then did something the cubs did not expect. She smiled. It was a wide, warm smile that showed her flat human teeth. And then she made a sound that the cubs had heard before but never understood. She laughed. "Oh my God," said, pressing a hand to her chest. "That is the thing I have ever seen." Did not know what cute meant, but he could tell it was not a bad word. The human was not angry, she was happy. This was good. "I am sorry," said his translator, turning his growls into human words. "I found your eye covers. I wanted to see what they do." Sat up and wiped tears from her eyes. She was still laughing. "They are called sunglasses. They protect my eyes from bright light." "Why do you need protection from light?" asked, genuinely confused. "Light cannot hurt you." "Human eyes are more sensitive than yours," explained. "Bright light gives us pain." The 3 cubs exchanged looks of horror. They had never considered that humans might be so fragile. It made them feel protective in a strange way. Reached out her hand and tensed, but she just gently adjusted the sunglasses on his face, bending the arms so they would fit around his skull. "There," she said, "now you look like a proper detective." Did not know what a detective was, but he wanted to find out. And that was how everything began. Did not think much about the sunglasses after that day. She had many pairs back home, and this one was old and scratched. She told he could keep them, expecting him to lose interest within a few hours. She was very wrong. That evening was eating dinner in the mess hall when she heard a commotion from the corridor. Soldiers were growling in confusion, their scales rippling with colors that meant surprise and amusement. Left her food and went to see what was happening. She found 7 cubs walking down the corridor in a straight line. They were all standing on their hind legs, moving with careful, awkward steps. Was at the front, wearing the sunglasses. Behind him came and 4 other cubs that recognized from around the base. The eldest was a female named Bora. She was almost as tall as waist, and her scales had already started to darken into adult colors. She carried a small notepad made from scrap paper, and she was writing something with a piece of charcoal. "What are you doing?" asked, kneeling down to their level. Bora looked at her with great seriousness. "We are investigating." "Investigating what?" "Everything," Bora said. "We are detectives now, like in your moving pictures." Blinked, then she understood. The cubs must have watched some of the crime dramas she had been streaming on her computer. She often fell asleep with the screen still playing. "You watch my shows?" asked. "We watched many of your shows," said proudly. "The humans in them are very smart. They find bad people and ask them questions until they confess. And they always wear the eye covers," added, pointing to the sunglasses on his face. "The eye covers make them powerful." Did not know whether to laugh or cry. These were the cubs of the most feared predator species in the galaxy, and they had decided to as TV detectives. "Okay," said slowly, "so what are you investigating?" Bora flipped through her notepad. "We have many cases. First, we want to know why Sergeant was in the mess hall at the 3rd hour of night." "Maybe he was hungry," suggested. "That is what he said," Bora replied. "But we do not believe him. His story has holes." "What holes?" "The food dispensers are closed at night," said. "So what was he really doing there?" Had to admit, the cubs had a point. She had no idea why would be in the mess hall in the middle of the night if he could not get food. "We also want to interview the base computer," said quietly. "We need to ask it where everyone was at all times." "You want to interrogate the AI?" asked. "Yes," said. "Does it have an alibi?" Could not hold back her laughter anymore. It burst out of her like water from a broken pipe. The cubs watched her with patient confusion, waiting for her to explain what was so funny. "Nothing," said, wiping her eyes. "Nothing is funny. You are all doing a great job." The cubs stood a little taller at her words. Praise from a human meant something to them. Humans were strange and fragile, but they were also clever and brave. Being praised by one felt like receiving a medal. Over the next few days, the cubs took their new roles very seriously. They patrolled the corridors of the base at all hours, stopping soldiers to ask them questions. They demanded to see identification. They took notes on everything they observed. At first, the adults were annoyed. Commander, the base leader, called into her office to complain. "Your influence has corrupted our young," said. Her 4 eyes were cold and hard. "They walk like humans, they talk like humans, they play human games." "They are just having fun," said. "Cubs play pretend, it is normal." "Cubs train for war," snapped. "They learn to hunt and fight and kill. They do not walk around asking where people were at the 3rd hour of night." Took a deep breath. "With respect, Commander, your cubs are living in a time of peace. There is no war right now. Maybe it is good for them to learn other skills." Scales turned a dark red color, which meant anger, but she did not speak. She just stared at for a long moment, then looked away. "Go," said, "but control your little investigators. They are disrupting base operations." Left the commander's office feeling worried. She did not want to get the cubs in trouble, but she also did not want to crush their spirits. When she returned to her quarters, she found all 7 cubs waiting for her. They were sitting in a circle on the floor, discussing their cases in serious voices. "Lieutenant," Bora said when she entered, "we need your help." "What is it?" asked. "We have discovered something strange," Bora said. 3 crates of emergency food have disappeared from Storage Bay 4. "Froze? What do you mean, disappeared?" "They were there 2 days ago," said, "and I counted them during our patrol, but today they are gone." "Did you tell anyone?" asked. The cubs shook their heads. "We wanted to tell you first," said. "You are our human friend, we trust you." Felt a warmth in her chest at those words, but she also felt a chill of worry. Missing supplies was not a game, it was a real problem. "Show me," she said. The cubs led her to Storage Bay 4, walking in their careful 2-legged patrol formation. Checked the shelves where the emergency rations should have been. The cubs were right. 3 crates were missing. She checked the inventory computer. According to the records, the crates were still there, but they clearly were not. Someone had stolen supplies from the base and the records to cover their tracks. Looked down at the 7 cubs watching her with eager, trusting eyes. They had found a real mystery, and now they expected her to help them solve it. "Okay," said softly, "it looks like we have a case." The cubs made sounds of excitement, their scales flashing with bright colors. Adjusted his sunglasses with one paw, trying to look serious and professional. Smiled despite her worry. These little predators had no idea what they had gotten themselves into. But neither did she. The next morning, gathered the cubs in her quarters for a meeting. She had thought about the situation all night and she had made a decision. The cubs had found a real crime. They deserved to be part of solving it. She pulled out 7 pieces of laminated paper from her desk. On each one, she had written Deputy Investigator in both human letters and symbols. She had drawn a small badge shape around the words. "These are your official badges," said, handing them out. "You are now my investigation team." The cubs received their badges with wide eyes and trembling paws. Bora held hers up to the light like it was made of gold, pressed his against his chest, right over his heart. "We will not fail you," Bora said solemnly. "We will find the thief." "I know you will," said, "but we have to be smart about this. We cannot let the thief know we are looking for them. If they find out, they might run away or hide the evidence." The cubs nodded seriously. They understood secrecy. They were predators after all. Stalking prey without being seen was in their blood. divided them into teams and gave each team a sector of the base to patrol. Bora and Wood watched the storage bays, and a cub named Juno would monitor the docking area where ships came and went, and two others would observe the communication center. "Watch everyone," said. "Note who goes where and when. Report anything strange to me." The cubs scattered to their positions with quiet efficiency, was impressed. When they wanted to be serious, they could be very professional. Over the next 3 days, the cubs gathered information. They watched and listened and wrote everything in their little notepads. They interviewed soldiers with innocent questions, pretending to be playing their detective game while actually searching for clues. Turned out to be the best at this. She was so quiet and still that people forgot she was there. She would sit in a corner of a room, absolutely motionless, and listen to every conversation around her. One afternoon, she came to with important news. "I heard 2 humans talking in the communications center," said. "One of them was nervous. He kept looking around to make sure no one was listening." "What did he say?" asked. "He said he needed money. He said he had found a buyer for something, but the deal had to happen soon, before anyone noticed." Felt her heart beat faster. "Did you see who it was?" Nodded. "It was the human who works with supplies, the one with short hair and a red mark on his face." Knew exactly who meant. Ensign Minu, one of the supply officers. He had a birthmark on his left cheek and had always seemed nervous and unhappy. "Are you sure?" asked. "I am sure," said. "He used his computer to send a message after the conversation. The message was in code, but I memorized the sounds he typed." Was amazed. Cubs had incredible hearing. They could remember sounds the way humans remembered images. "Can you write down what you heard?" asked. Closed her eyes and slowly wrote out a string of letters and numbers on her notepad. Took the paper and stared at it. It looked like random nonsense, but she knew it had to mean something. She spent the next 2 hours working on the code. It was not complicated, just a simple letter shift that any smart person could break. When she finished decoding the message, her blood ran cold. The message said, "Shipment ready, meeting point Delta, 3 hours after dark, bring payment." Someone was selling stolen supplies to an outside buyer, and the meeting was happening tonight. Gathered all the cubs in her quarters and explained what they had found. Their scales flickered with colors of excitement and fear. "What do we do?" asked, adjusting his sunglasses. "Do we tell Commander?" Thought about it. By rights, she should report this to the commander immediately, but had been angry about the cubs' investigations. She might not believe them, or she might take over the case and shut the cubs out. "Not yet," decided. "We need more evidence first. We need to catch the thief in the act." "How?" Bora asked. "We watch the meeting point," said. "We see who shows up. We record everything." The cubs agreed with eager nods. They were not scared. They were thrilling with the excitement of the hunt. This was what they were born for, even if the prey was a criminal instead of an animal. That night, and the 7 cubs crept through the base to the area called Delta Point. It was a loading dock on the far side of the outpost, rarely used and poorly lit. They found hiding spots among the cargo containers and waited. The twin moons rose in the sky, casting silver light across the metal floor. For 2 hours, nothing happened. Some of the younger cubs started to get restless, but Bora silenced them with a look. Then, at exactly 3 hours after dark, a figure appeared. It was Minu. He moved quickly and nervously, carrying a heavy bag over his shoulder. He kept looking around, checking for watchers. But he did not look down, where 7 small predators watched him with 4 eyes each. Minu reached the edge of the loading dock and waited. A few minutes later, a small shuttle appeared in the sky, descending quietly with its lights turned off. It landed on the dock, and a door opened. A strange alien stepped out. Did not recognize the species. It was tall and thin, with long arms and a face like a skull. "You have the goods?" the alien asked. Right here, Minyu said, opening his bag. Inside were packages of emergency rations, medical supplies, and power cells, all stolen from the base. Pulled out her personal computer and started recording. The cubs watched in absolute silence, their bodies pressed flat against the ground. "This is enough for now," the alien said, handing Minyu a small box. "We will need more next week." "I can get more," Minyu said. His voice was shaking. "But I need more money. The debts are getting worse." "You will get what we agreed," the alien said coldly. "No more." Had seen enough. She had the evidence she needed, but before she could signal the cubs to retreat, something went wrong. Juno, the youngest of the group, sneezed. It was a tiny sound, barely a whisper, but the alien's head snapped toward their hiding spot instantly. "Who is there?" the alien hissed, pulling out a weapon. Minyu's face went white with terror. "No one should be here, I checked." The alien raised its weapon and fired at the cargo containers where the cubs were hiding. The energy blast missed, but it was close enough to singe Juno's scales. Did not think. She jumped out of hiding and shouted at the top of her lungs. "Run, everyone run, back to the base." The cubs scattered in 7 different directions, moving faster than any human could follow. Ran with them, her heart pounding in her chest. Behind them, she heard Minyu screaming at the alien, and the alien screaming back. Then the shuttle's engines roared, and the alien was gone. But Minyu was still there, and now he knew someone had seen everything. The game had suddenly become very dangerous, did not sleep that night. She sat in her quarters with the door locked, watching the recording she had made over and over again. The evidence was clear. Minyu was guilty. But now he knew someone had seen him, and she did not know what he would do. The cubs came to her in the morning, one by one, slipping through the corridors like shadows. They gathered in her quarters, their scales dull with worry. Juno kept touching the spot where the energy blast had almost hit him. "I am sorry," Juno whispered. "I put everyone in danger." "It was not your fault," said gently. "You are just a cub. Sneezing is not a crime." But she could see that Juno did not believe her. His eyes were full of shame. Bora stepped forward, her back straight and her chin high. Even without the sunglasses, she looked like a leader. "We need to finish this," Bora said. "The thief knows we saw him. If we wait, he will run away or hurt someone. We must confront him now." Shook her head. "It is too dangerous. I should report this to Commander and let the soldiers handle it." "The commander does not believe in us," said. "She thinks we are just playing games. She will not listen." "And Minyu knows your face," added quietly. "He saw you when you told us to run. He will know you are the one who reported him." Had not thought about that. Was right. Minyu had seen her clearly in the moonlight. If she reported him, he might try to silence her before the soldiers could act. She looked at the 7 cubs standing before her. They were young and small, but their eyes were bright with determination. They were not afraid. They were warriors, born from a race of hunters who had conquered star systems. "What do you suggest?" asked. Bora exchanged glances with her littermates. "We confront him together, all of us. He cannot fight all 7 of us plus you, and we will do it in public where everyone can see. He will not dare to attack us in front of witnesses." It was a good plan, simple and direct, exactly what would expect from young predators. "Okay," said, "we do it today at sunset in the cargo bay." The cubs nodded in agreement. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Bora practiced what she would say, rehearsed looking intimidating, cleaned his sunglasses until they sparkled. When sunset came, they moved together through the base. Word had spread that something was happening, and soldiers followed at a distance to watch. Even Commander appeared, standing in the shadows with her arms crossed. They found Minyu in Cargo Bay 4, exactly where knew he would be. He was packing a bag, clearly planning to run. When he saw the cubs and enter, his face turned pale as paper. "What is this?" Minyu demanded. His voice cracked with fear. Bora walked forward until she stood in the center of the cargo bay. The other cubs arranged themselves in a half-circle behind her, standing on their hind legs, wore the sunglasses. They all wore their deputy investigator badges. "Ensign Minu," Bora said, her translator giving her words a calm, steady tone. "We know what you did." Minu laughed, but it was a scared, desperate sound. "What are you talking about? You are just children. You are just playing pretend." "We watched you last night," said. "We saw you give the stolen supplies to the alien." "We recorded everything," added. "We have the evidence." Minu's eyes went wide. He looked at, and she held up her computer, showing him the video on the screen. "It is over," said. "You can try to run, but every exit is being watched. You can try to fight, but you are outnumbered. The only choice you have left is whether you confess with dignity or get dragged away in shame." Minu stared at the screen. He watched himself handing over the stolen supplies. He watched himself taking the payment. The evidence was undeniable. His legs gave out beneath him. He fell to his knees on the metal floor, and tears began to stream down his face. "I did not want to do it," Minu sobbed. "I had no choice. I owe money to bad people. They said they would hurt my family if I did not pay. I did not know what else to do." The cubs looked at each other uncertainly. This was not like their detective shows. In the shows, the criminals were evil and proud. They did not cry and talk about their families. Took off his sunglasses and walked forward slowly. He stopped in front of Minu and looked up at the crying human. "Why did you not ask for help?" asked. "We would have helped you." Minu shook his head. "I was too ashamed. I thought I could handle it myself. I thought no one would notice a few missing crates." "You were wrong," Bora said, but her voice was softer now. "We noticed." Stepped forward and put a hand on Minu's shoulder. He flinched at her touch but did not pull away. "You made bad choices," said. "You will have to face the consequences. But you told the truth when it mattered. That counts for something." "What will happen to me?" Minu asked, his voice breaking. "You will face a tribunal," said. "They will decide your punishment, but I will tell them that you confessed willingly, that you were trying to protect your family." Minu nodded, still crying. He looked broken and small, nothing like the dangerous criminal the cubs had imagined. Bora reached into her pouch and pulled out a spare pair of sunglasses, had given them to her a few days ago, just in case. Bora walked over to Minu and held them out. "Humans wear these to hide their eyes when they are sad," Bora said. "You may borrow them." Minu looked at the sunglasses in the cub's small paw. He let out a sound that was half laugh and half sob. "Thank you," he said, "but I do not deserve to hide. Everyone should see what I have become." Commander stepped out of the shadows. Her scales were a neutral gray color, impossible to read. She walked toward Minu and looked down at him with her 4 cold eyes. "Take him to the holding cells," ordered. 2 soldiers came forward and lifted Minu to his feet. He went with them without resistance, his head hanging low. When he was gone, turned to face the cubs. They stood in their little group, still wearing their badges, still trying to look professional despite the emotions swirling in their chests. "You found the thief," said. It was not a question. "Yes, Commander," Bora said. Was silent for a long moment. Then she did something none of the cubs expected. She bowed her head just slightly in a gesture of respect. "Well done," she said, "all of you." Then she turned and walked away, leaving the cubs standing in stunned silence. Gathered them together in a group hug, which was an awkward thing to do with 7 small predators who had scales and claws. But she did not care. She was proud of them. "You did it," she whispered. "You solved the case." "We did it together," said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. And for the first time since they found her sunglasses, the cubs were not playing pretend anymore. They were real investigators, and they had done something that mattered. The story of the 7 cub detectives spread across the stars like fire through dry grass. Within a week, Every outpost in the sector knew about how a group of cubs had caught a thief by playing human games. Within a month, the tale had reached the itself. The High Council, the ruling body of the Dominion, called a special meeting to discuss the incident. Commander was summoned to appear before them and explain how cubs under her command had been allowed to behave in such an undignified manner. Was terrified for her. She had heard stories about the High Council. They were old and traditional and did not like change. They believed that cubs should train for war from the moment they could walk. Playing detective was not part of their ancient traditions. But when returned from the 3 days later, she was not angry. She was not punished. In fact, she was smiling, which was something had never seen before. "What happened?" asked, meeting in the docking bay. Scales shimmered with colors of amusement and satisfaction. "The council watched your recording. They saw how the cubs gathered information, how they worked as a team, how they confronted the criminal. They were impressed." "Impressed," repeated. "I thought they would be angry." "Some of them were," admitted. "The older members wanted to ban all human cultural content from our youth, but the younger members argued against them. They said that our cubs learned valuable skills from this experience." "What kind of skills?" Counted on her clawed fingers. Observation, patience, questioning, working together without violence, understanding that not all enemies are simple and not all problems can be solved by fighting. Felt a warm glow of pride in her chest. Those were exactly the things she had hoped the cubs would learn. "The council made a decision," continued. "From now on, every outpost with human personnel will have a junior investigation corps. Cubs will be trained in observation and problem-solving alongside their combat training." His mouth fell open. "You are joking." "I never joke," said, but there was a gleam in her 4 eyes that suggested otherwise. The next day, received an official document from High Command. It was a requisition order for 47 pairs of aviator sunglasses to be distributed to cubs across the Alliance. The order was signed by the High Council itself. Laughed until tears ran down her face. Over the following months, she watched the changes spread. Cubs on distant outposts formed their own investigation teams. They made their own badges and patrolled their bases with serious faces. Some of them even solved real problems, finding lost items, settling disputes, and catching soldiers who broke minor rules. The adult pretended to be annoyed by this new tradition. They rolled their eyes when cubs demanded to know where they had been at certain times. They sighed heavily when small investigators followed them around taking notes. But noticed that the adults never actually stopped the cubs. And sometimes, when they thought no one was watching, they smiled at the little detectives with something like pride. One evening was called to Commander's office. She expected a routine briefing about base operations. Instead, she found sitting at her desk with a strange expression on her face. "Close the door," said. Obeyed, suddenly nervous. "Is something wrong?" "I want to show you something," said. She reached into a drawer and pulled out an object that made his heart stop. It was a pair of aviator sunglasses. "Where did you get those?" asked. "They were a gift," said stiffly. Her scales turned a deep violet color which had learned meant embarrassment. "From my niece. She is one of the cubs in the investigation corps now." Bora guessed. Nodded. "She said I would make a good detective. She said I have sharp eyes and a clever mind." The commander's voice softened. "No one has ever said such things to me before. My whole life I have been told that I am a good warrior, a good commander, but never that I am clever." Did not know what to say. She had never seen this side of before. Put on the sunglasses and looked at her reflection in the polished surface of her desk. She looked strange and a little foolish, a fierce predator wearing human eye covers. But there was also something powerful about it. Something that said she was willing to learn, willing to change, willing to be more than what she was born to be. "Your people have a saying," said. I heard it in one of your moving pictures. Everyone deserves a second chance. We do say that, agreed. It is a good saying, said. I think perhaps we should adopt it. She took off the sunglasses and placed them carefully on her desk, right next to her ceremonial blade. The two objects sat side by side, symbols of two different ways of solving problems. You have changed us, Lieutenant Park said. I do not know if it is for better or worse, but you have changed us. Thought about the cubs patrolling the corridors with their badges and notepads. She thought about Minu, who had confessed his crimes and was now serving his sentence with the promise of a second chance when he finished. She thought about all the who had learned that strength did not always mean violence. I think it is for better, said. I hope so anyway. Nodded slowly. We will see. That night sat in the observation deck and watched the twin suns set. The 7 cubs sat with her, all of them wearing sunglasses now. They had grown so much in the past months. They were still young, still playful, still prone to silly games and petty arguments. But there was something new in their eyes, a sense of purpose, a belief that they could make a difference without using their claws. Lieutenant said, breaking the comfortable silence, when you leave, will you forget about us? Looked at him with surprise. Leave? Who said anything about leaving? Humans do not stay in one place forever, Bora said. We learned that from your shows. You always move on to the next adventure. Smiled and put her arm around Small's shoulders. Some humans do, but I think I have found my place here, with my favorite investigation team. The cubs made sounds of happiness, their scales flashing with bright colors. They pressed closer to her, sharing warmth in the cooling evening air. Besides, added, someone has to keep ordering more sunglasses. The High Council placed another requisition this morning, 63 pairs this time. Gasped, that is so many. More cubs want to join the Corps, explained. Word has spread to other sectors. Everyone wants to be a detective now. Looked up at the purple sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere out there, across thousands of light years, human culture was spreading, not through war or conquest, but through something much stranger and more powerful. Through sunglasses, through television shows, through cubs who wanted to be like the clever humans they saw on screens. They had come to learn human tactics, thought. They had stayed for human stories, and in learning to tell those stories, they had found new ways to be themselves. That was the real victory, not defeating enemies but creating friends, not fighting battles but solving problems together. The cubs began to argue about their next case, something about missing cleaning supplies in the maintenance section. Listened with half an ear, smiling at their enthusiasm. Tomorrow there would be more mysteries to solve, more criminals to catch, more lessons to learn. But tonight, under the alien stars, a human and 7 young predators sat together as family, and that was enough. That was more than enough.